Welcome to Down the Dopamine Hole. I'm Dr. Amy Gertine. I only use the doctor part to make myself feel important, so, you all can just call me Amy. Prescriptions for stimulants for ADHD increased by 30% between 2018 and 2022. 30% in 4 years. And yes, that was during the pandemic, so a lot of people might think that it had to do with a lot of people being stuck inside their houses. However, prescriptions for depression, anxiety, and even opioid abuse remained consistent. No increase in depression, anxiety, and opioid abuse, but a 30% increase in ADHD medication. This led to stimulant shortages in the US, which I'm sure those of you with ADHD remember, and the FDA and the DEA encouraging doctors to be more careful in their diagnoses. 2 to 5% of the world's population has ADHD. In the US, 6% of adults have been diagnosed with ADHD, and 25% of adults suspect they have ADHD. That's just not possible. 26% of the population has psychological disorders. So, like what? 1% is diagnosed with the over 300 psychological disorders in the DSM, and the other 25% have ADHD? No. So what's the deal? Why the increase in diagnosis, and why are so many adults self-diagnosing? There are multiple reasons. One is that we really are understanding what ADHD looks like in adults, and especially inattentive ADHD without the hyperactive impulsive component. And these people are finally being properly diagnosed. But that is still a really small number of people. And that does not account for the total increase in diagnosis, and especially in the number of people who self-diagnose as ADHD. So let's talk about the 25% of adults that suspect that they have ADHD. Could some of them be ADHD? Absolutely. All of them? No, not at all. A study of TikTok videos found that less than half of the videos about ADHD talked about symptoms that were aligned with DSM criteria. Okay, I can understand some of that. I did 2 podcasts on symptoms typical in ADHD that don't align with DSM symptoms. However, another study of TikTok videos on ADHD found over half had misleading information and only 21% were useful. This is much more concerning. These videos also make people who watch think that ADHD is much more prevalent than people who don't watch these videos. Remember, those of you who watch TikTok, the world prevalence for ADHD is 2 to 5%, with 6% of adults in the US, not 25%. So why is there so much confusion about ADHD? There's a couple of reasons. The diagnostic criteria for ADHD wasn't written for adults. It was written for children and then kind of modified for adults and not modified very well. For example, one of the criteria for hyperactivity and impulsivity is, quote, often unable to relax or engage in leisure activities quietly, unquote. When I go through the criteria with adults, they'll look at me and they'll kind of go, no. And then I'll ask, do you talk to yourself out loud? Do you sing a lot or hum or whistle or make little noises like when you're doing something? And then they'll stop and go, oh, yeah, I do that. And I'll say, that is unable to relax or engage in tasks quietly. Another symptom is, quote, often leaves seat in situations when remaining seated is expected, unquote. And they'll say, no. And I'll ask, do you pace when you're on the phone? Do you have a hands-on job? Do you use a standing desk? And then it's pretty amazing how many people will answer yes to these questions. Take that criteria and modify it for someone who has the ability to control their environment. Pretty much the same thing. Basically, we manipulate our environment as adults so we don't have to sit like we did when we were younger. Once we learn what the criteria looks like in adults, it becomes much easier to diagnose ADHD in adults. Now let's talk about another reason why it's so hard to diagnose ADHD. One of our favorite things, technology. Psychologists have known for years that technology has been affecting our attention levels. As one of those psychologists that has been reading that research since before we had smartphones, as well as teaching at the college level before smartphones, it's been an interesting development to watch. Technology is an addiction that is socially acceptable. There aren't many addictions that we have where people are encouraged to get more and use more, but technology is one of them. And people may know some of the negative effects of technology, but they do nothing about it. And one of the worst things about technology is it is destroying our ability to pay attention. As the use of technology has increased, our brains have been trained, many from like a really young age, to engage in more multitasking behaviors, which is also known as attention switching. These attention switching behaviors prime the brain for becoming used to excessive amounts of stimulation and immediate gratification. So basically, you get used to a lot of really constantly stimulation whenever you want it, and then as time goes on, more and more frequently. Because technology provides dopamine when the brain is developing, addiction pathways in the brain are being activated and strengthened with the use of technology. Technology use causes the same social, emotional, and cognitive feelings that we get when we eat food we like, when we snuggle our pet, when we hang out with our friends, when we have sex, when we have a beer, or even when we get high. So not only is technology affecting how our brain pays attention, but we're also becoming addicted to it. To any parent who has ever taken away a phone from a child, or any child who has ever had a phone taken away, you know what I'm talking about. Over 50% of teens even admit to being addicted to their phones. The biggest problems are TV, video games, and short-form videos. Short-form videos are videos that last from 15 seconds to 3 minutes, like TikTok, Facebook Reels, or Instagram. TV is a passive activity, which can cause problems when active attention is needed to complete a task. Video games and short-form videos both provide such intense, constantly changing stimuli and dopamine that completing tasks that don't provide that level of stimulation are seen as being almost painfully boring. The lack of attention that's been learned from media use makes it extremely difficult to complete tasks that require active, sustained attention. Overall, the more technology you use, for whatever reason, the more likely it is to negatively affect your attention span. Because we're switching our attention every few seconds, we're not getting into flow states. Flow states are the states that you get into when you're doing something that is so enjoyable, so encompassing, that you lose track of everything else. Flow states are really good for relaxation and calm. And there's something that a lot of people don't experience anymore. Being constantly stimulated does not allow for the mind to wander, which doesn't allow for brainstorming or impromptu problem solving. The constantly changing stimulation makes the brain get used to it. And when you're not receiving that, you get bored. So you look for more. With kids being on screens from the time they're pretty much born, is screen time increasing ADHD? No. ADHD is a neurodevelopmental disorder, meaning that there are differences in the way that the brain works, not just similar symptoms that arise due to frequent use of screen time. Although using a lot of technology can cause the brain to get more bored easily, it still isn't causing the brain to look like those with ADHD. And believe me, we have all kinds of research involving brain scans of those with ADHD versus those without. So it's more accurate to say that more screen time can cause more symptoms that are similar to ADHD, but not ADHD itself. So you might ask, if a lot of screen time can cause the symptoms of ADHD, what's the difference between that and ADHD? Well, I will tell you. There's a lot more to ADHD than a short attention span. There's actually 9 symptoms of inattention, like making careless mistakes, not being able to follow through on instructions, or problems with memory. There are also 9 symptoms of hyperactivity and impulsivity, like talking excessively, blurting out answers before questions are completed, or using others' things without asking. Someone can be diagnosed with inattentive ADHD, hyperactive impulsive ADHD, or combined ADHD, depending on which of the criteria that they meet. Additional criteria that has to be met is that the symptoms have to have started prior to the age of 12, even if the person wasn't diagnosed prior to the age of 12. And the symptoms have to be present in 2 or more situations, meaning at school and at home, at work and at home, or with your friends and school, home, etc. So let me give you an example. If you have the inattentive type, You may find it hard to focus on schoolwork or, work. But you also may find it difficult to focus on things you enjoy, like having conversations with friends or engaging in an enjoyed activity. And I'm not talking about just not being able to sit and talk with friends without doing something else in the meantime. It's normal for people now to talk while also scrolling or watching TV. And it's also normal to miss part of one or the other because in reality, we can't multitask as much as we think we can. So if you're talking to a friend, you're scrolling on your phone, chances are you're going to miss part of what your friend says or part of what you're seeing on your phone. That's normal. What isn't normal is to only be having a conversation with a friend with no phone and still missing what your friend is saying, or to only be watching TV and suddenly realizing that you have no idea what's going on in your show. Another thing that's not normal is planning something enjoyable after work, like going shopping because you just got paid. And then a couple of hours after you get home, realizing that you forgot to go shopping. Most people think that ADHD people have problems with things that they don't enjoy. The thing that they don't realize is that ADHD people also have problems with things that they do enjoy. They forget to do those things, or they lose focus in the middle of something that they're having fun doing. There's also things like forgetting necessary things, like forgetting to eat until your cat is yelling at you at 10:30 at night because you didn't eat dinner and, feed her either. In reality, ADHD isn't just not being able to pay attention. It's an attention regulation issue because there are also times when we can hyperfocus to the point that we have no idea what's going on around us, sometimes for hours, hence the whole forgetting to eat and having my cat yell at me. It's basically all or nothing when it comes to attention. ADHD also involves issues with the reward system in the brain. For most people, the reward system works on expectations of dopamine, the feel-good chemical, based on past experience. For example, if you have completed a task in the past and it made you feel good, you have the expectation that it's going to make you feel good if you do it this time too. When you think about doing the task, your brain starts to produce a little bit of dopamine in expectation of the reward that you're going to get when you complete it. This anticipatory dopamine makes you actually motivated to start the task because you know that when you finish it, you're going to get a bigger hit of dopamine. In ADHD people, we don't make as much dopamine. So when we finish doing something, especially something that we don't enjoy, there is no dopamine hit. There's no feeling of reward. There's only a feeling of relief. So the next time we think about doing it, we don't get the anticipatory dopamine because we didn't get the dopamine the last time we did it. So when we do things that we don't enjoy, like cleaning our house, we don't get that feeling of, oh, this feels great. My house is clean. We don't get that. Or when we finish our homework, or when we finish doing something for work, we don't get that, oh my God, that feels great. We get relief. That's it. So the next time we think about doing it, we don't get anticipatory dopamine. We don't have that motivation to do it. And this is one of the reasons why ADHD procrastination exists, and we wait until the very last minute to do something because there is no other motivation. ADHD also involves executive functioning issues. Think of executive functioning as everything necessary to make a plan and stay on task long enough to achieve that plan. Executive functioning has three main components: working memory or short-term memory, and that can involve things like forgetting what you're saying in the middle of saying it, forgetting what you're doing in the middle of doing it because you got distracted and then not going back to the original task, forgetting doctor's appointments or assignments or project due dates, problems planning multi-step projects, problems following fast conversations that involve a lot of details, problems remembering the details of a book or a movie by the time you get to the end. A second thing with executive functioning is inhibitory control, or being able to control your thoughts, behaviors, emotions, and attention despite outside influences. So this involves things like emotional regulation. Emotions can be more extreme. Prioritizing things like small things may carry the weight as bigger things. So taking out the garbage may seem as important as that 15-page paper you have to write. Impulsive behaviors, there tends to be more types of things like spending, gambling, sex, drinking, and drug use, oversharing, stuff like that. Starting things without reading all the instructions, and hyperfocus. The third thing with executive functioning is cognitive flexibility. Cognitive flexibility is the ability to change how we think about something or adjust to any type of a changing demand. So this is task initiation, or being able to start tasks. Task switching, which is once we get into something, being able to stop doing what we're doing and start doing something else, which can be really difficult for us. We tend to not handle change well, even minor change. We tend to continue to use problem-solving methods that don't work. We tend to fixate on a single detail, even sometimes to the exclusion of the bigger picture. And we have problems seeing other perspectives, which is why sometimes we get very fixated on our own point of view. So how do we know if it's technology or if it's ADHD? First, get evaluated. Stop saying, I think I'm ADHD, I just haven't been diagnosed. That's like saying, I think I have cancer, but I haven't been diagnosed. And I'm sure you can hear exactly how that sounds. I actually diagnose people for a living. I have diagnosed people for decades. I couldn't even see it in myself. I'm guessing most of you don't have my credentials, so please stop trying to diagnose yourself. It's not working very well. But here's a few things to think about. Technology-related inattention and ADHD can sometimes look surprisingly similar on the surface. Both can involve difficulty focusing, forgetfulness, mind wandering, and getting distracted from the task at hand. The difference is that technology creates distractions from the outside. Our phones, tablets, computers, and apps are designed to grab our attention with notifications, endless scrolling, personalized content, and a constant stream of new information. Over time, we can get used to switching our attention quickly, making it harder to stay focused on activities that are slower, less stimulating, or don't provide an immediate reward. ADHD, on the other hand, is not simply a matter of being distracted by technology. ADHD is a neurodevelopmental condition that begins in childhood and affects many areas of life, including schoolwork, relationships, organization, time management, and emotional regulation. People with ADHD often experience attention problems even when technology is not involved. ADHD distractions often come from the inside, distracting thoughts, impulsive behaviors, problems regulating emotions, problems with memory, and problems starting or changing tasks. Many individuals with ADHD can focus extremely well on activities they find interesting or rewarding, a phenomenon known as hyperfocus, while struggling to direct attention toward tasks that feel boring, repetitive, or overwhelming. Do you have problems with memory, controlling your emotions, and impulsivity? Do your attention issues also happen when doing things you like, or only when doing things that you don't like? Do you hate change? Do you forget to do things you like to do? Can you focus for hours on things you like to do? This may include sitting in one place and doing nothing else, but maybe getting up to go to the bathroom. These things are more typical of ADHD, but not attention issues due to technology. Of course, technology and ADHD can interact in interesting ways. The fast-paced, highly stimulating nature of digital media can be especially appealing to ADHD brains because it provides novelty, immediate feedback, and frequent rewards. At the same time, technology can make almost anyone feel a little scattered. After all, if a squirrel interrupted your work every 3 minutes with breaking news, funny videos, shopping suggestions, and pictures of someone else's lunch, you'd probably have trouble concentrating too. So before jumping to conclusions, it's worth considering the bigger picture. Is the inattention mostly happening when technology is involved, or has it been present across different settings and throughout pretty much your entire life? Understanding that distinction can help people make informed decisions about whether they might benefit from changing technology habits, seeking an ADHD evaluation, or both. And with that information to consider, I'll leave you to return to the rest of your digital world, hopefully armed with a little more knowledge and maybe a little more awareness of where your attention is going. If you've made it this far without checking your phone, congratulations. You've already demonstrated an impressive amount of focus. That's all I have for today. Thank you for spending your valuable time with me. And until next time, may your notifications be few, May your browser tabs be manageable and your attention stay with you at least long enough to finish what you started. Hit the buttons to subscribe, get notifications, and feel free to comment. I hope you learned something new today and enjoyed your time down the dopamine hole. Be safe, take care of yourself, be happy, but most importantly, keep it weird.